Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. Yeah!
Hi, welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this episode, I'm going to talk to you about filter cleaning. I'm going to give you some tips on making this really something, I wouldn't say enjoyable, but not really a chore or pain. And especially if you are a pool pro and you do 60 or 70 filter cleanings 2 or 3 times a year, this is really going to help you speed up your day out there as well. Pool Service Pro, open a Leslie's wholesale account today and receive wholesale pricing on products you use every day. Leslie's Pool Supply offers convenient locations that are open 7 days a week. Another great benefit of opening a Leslie's wholesale account is Leslie's referral program. Get referred to a customer looking for weekly pool service. Save time and money and grow your pool service route and become a Leslie's Pro. I think one thing that's going to help you, and I'm going to start off by talking to the pro out there, is to be organized. What I do when I have my filter cleaning time is I'll print out a list. And this is something that I think is essential, having a printed list on a clipboard with all the filters that I need to clean. And I have this in a Word document so I know like which pool has which type of filter. And then I'll print this out and I'll keep this on my clipboard and I'll check off the filters that I've cleaned. And this really helps kind of give you a visual aid of like how many filters are left before your cleaning cycle is done. And I also like to organize it in the DE and cartridge filter categories. And I prefer cleaning all the DE filters first and then the cartridge filters second. I mean, I may make some exceptions and mix a little bit, but I find that I'm in the better mindset when I'm doing all of one type of filter. And in my area, it's a good mix of both DE and cartridge filters. It's like a 50-50 or 40-60 mix. And it's something that I found to be mentally helpful when I separate those and focus on one type of filter to another. Now you have to have the right tools to do this as well. And so I think one of the things that is lacking is using or utilizing tools that speed up your filter cleaning out there. So taking the clamp off of the full-size filters is a chore in itself, especially if you're doing 60 or 70 of these. And I found that the Multi-Tork filter tools or filter sockets are a great way to speed your day up out there. You can learn more about the Multi-Tork filter sockets at multi-tork.com. That's multi-tork.com, or just type Multi-Tork and Google will get you there. And basically, these are made for your power drill. I like a cordless drill myself. I think it's more convenient. And you want to get a cordless drill with a lot of torque. I like the Rigid brand from Home Depot. They're really reliable and they have really good torque. And the reason why you need torque, and it kind of goes with the name of the product, is that you put this filter socket on the end of your drill, and then you can remove just about every filter clamp in a matter of seconds, from the 4000 series, 2000 series, little black kind of nut handle plastic thing, to the, I described that pretty poorly, to the the Pentair Clean and Clear Plus spring barrel nuts, Hayward filters, Jandy filters, anything with the spring barrel nut, they'll have a Multi-Tork for that. They sell a set, so you can buy a complete set of the Multi-Tork that will cover just about every filter, including the System 3 filters, which are notoriously time consuming with those 8 or 10 clamps on the side of them. And it's one of the things that these tools really speed up your cleaning out there. And if you haven't bought the Multi-Tork socket sets, I recommend you buy them and get them for your pool service or even for your personal pool. You can just buy the one that you need for your pool. And of course, they're really well made and durable now. They're made out of anodized aluminum. Most of them are, at least. And then the most popular one would be the MT100. And this is a dual socket for the 9/16 and 7/8. And this is good for, again, most of the filters out there, from Pentair to Hayward to Jandy. Although the newer Hayward, you're going to need the MT100H, because the newer Hayward filters changed their nut to be a little bit wider. But the older Hayward filters, this will work perfectly fine on. And again, this saves you so much time out there removing that clamp, which can be a pain to remove in a speedy manner. Another tool that you may be interested in investing in is the Cyclone filter cleaner. And this is a pretty simple device. There's a stand, and then there's two bearings that you put the cartridge filter into, and you use the particular adapter that comes with it for the nozzle, I should say. And then you would clean the filters, and you can clean them without bending over, which is nice. And if you do 4 or 5 full-size cartridge filters a day, you know that bending over the cartridges can be a real strain on your back. The Cyclone filter cleaner, you can learn more about that at cyclonefiltercleaner.com, and you can order it there. And it's great for a homeowner that does their filter cleaning also, because then you can clean your cartridge filter and save on your back. But it's made primarily for the pool pro who needs a good, easy way to clean these cartridge filters in a fast, rapid fashion without straining themselves. So definitely check that out. I think it's $329 or around $300 for the Cyclone filter cleaning kit. And it comes with, again, the bearings and also the stand and the nozzle to clean the cartridge filters easily and quickly. Speaking of nozzles, I think if you're cleaning D filters and cartridge filters without this particular tool, the Cyclone filter cleaner, the best nozzle that I found for cleaning filters, and you can order this on Amazon. Used to be able to pick it up at Walmart for like $3. They had a whole end cap, or not a whole end cap, but a whole container full of them, and I would just grab like 3 or 4 of them because they do wear out fairly quickly if you're using them, to clean 80 or 90 filters. But I like the Orbit Sunmate Hose End 58361N sweeper nozzle. Again, that's the Orbit Sunmate Hose End 58361N sweeper nozzle. And this is just like a little nozzle that goes on the end of your hose. But it's such a great high pressure nozzle that I find that it cleans DE filter grids very easily. It cleans cartridge filters very rapidly. And it even works really well with low water pressure. So if you have an account where the water pressure is really low, the Orbit Sunmate 58361N will work perfectly with low pressure. It's my go-to nozzle. I carry 3 or 4 of them in my truck because they break on occasion, and then you just have to replace them, or you'll lose them. I've left them at customer stops. Unfortunately, I left them on their hose, and this is something that is a definite must. I also think you should get a good collapsible hose, because sometimes the customer's hoses are just a mess. They have holes in them. The end of them are crushed. I don't know how that happens, but it seems like every single customer's hose that I go to use, the end where you thread in the nozzle is crushed somehow. I don't know, they run it over with their car or something, but those are useless, or their hoses don't have the O-ring in them and water shooting out everywhere when you turn it on from the spigot. So I usually bring my own hose back to almost all the stops, and this depends on how far the hose spigot is from your equipment. Sometimes you can get away with using a 50-foot one. A lot of times you would want to get a 75 or 100-foot collapsible hose. And I guess I'm not using the right term. I think the actual term, besides I call them collapsible because they really fold down to nothing. But if you look on Amazon, they're actually called expandable hoses. And they're either anywhere from $50 to $180 for, there's one here for $80, 100 foot. It's J&B expand hose, 100-foot expandable garden hose. If you just go to Amazon and type in garden hose expandable, you'll see all the different ones there. And just a note about the expandable hoses, they are not really friendly with rose bushes or anything sharp. So I've actually broken a couple of these by pulling them through a planter over a rose bush and over something sharp. So they're not super durable, so just be aware of that and be careful with them. But I like them because you can carry them back easily and they collapse down pretty well. And so it's not like you're bringing back, a full-size garden hose. Those are a pain to bring back and forth. They're pretty light too when they're empty. And they usually come with a cheap nozzle, which you're going to discard and use the Orbit's nozzle. But of course, having your own hose is important because sometimes they show up at the stop and the hose is not functioning, or usually the hose for the customer is not functioning or not usable for your filter cleaning. Now, where you clean the filters is also an important factor. If you do D filters and you're cleaning them on cement, and you're cleaning them by a drain on a cement surface, be aware that for the next 2 or 3 weeks, there's going to be residual diatomaceous earth dust all over the cement. Even if you hose it off really well the day you're there, it's going to dry and you're going to have DE everywhere. And one of the biggest complaints I get is from customers that go out there the next day, and I've had customers call me or text me angrily saying, "There's so much dust over here by the pool still or by the equipment pad. Can you come back and clean it?" And it's really frustrating because DE filters are notoriously messy, and when they dry, the dust is there for sometimes months. It's kind of just one of the natures of diatomaceous earth. So I try my best to clean diatomaceous earth filters on the lawn. If they have a grassy area, sometimes I'll clean them into a planter, but sometimes you'll get the gray DE all over the planter too, and they don't like that. So a lot of times, the best place to clean them is the lawn if there's a grass area. If not, maybe find a side area where you can kind of clean them all, and it's not going to be very obvious. But that's the nature of DE filters. They're a pain to find sometimes a good location to clean, and the diatomaceous earth gets everywhere. It's pretty harmless to the lawn, by the way. There's not much residual chlorine on the grids, and I've never really had a problem with like the grass dying after cleaning them. You just don't want to leave big clumps of DE in the lawn because then the landscaper will be yelling at you as well. They don't like cutting the grass and big clumps of DE flying everywhere. So make sure you clean up well and hose down everything onto the lawn. As far as cartridge filters go, I really prefer cleaning these, and it's really easy. Sometimes there's some residual dirt, I'll grant you that, but you can clean them just about anywhere, and it's just basically dirt coming off of them. So you clean them into planters, clean them on cement, and just make sure you clean all the dirt up. And maybe there's some dirt left over, but it's not nearly as bad as the DE dust getting everywhere. Someone walks on top of the DE dust, it tracks on their shoes, and before you know it, it's all over the backyard patio area. So the cartridge filters are my preferred filter type, and they're easy to clean, and I think you can clean them just about anywhere without a problem. They take a little bit longer to clean, I'll grant you that, than, well, maybe it depends on how fast you are at cleaning them, but I would say that cartridge filters are a little bit more time consuming in my opinion than DE filters. I can clean DE filters pretty rapidly. Now there are certain tricks you can do with DE filters. You could take off the top manifold and take each grid out one by one. I prefer doing it one by one, that way you can rebuild it and don't have to worry about it. You can actually pull out the entire grid assembly if you're strong enough, if the filter's small enough. This is my preferred method of pulling out the whole grid assembly, and then I'll clean off the DE filter and the grass still all assembled. Just keep turning it, twisting it, getting all the hose off the areas there. And a third method is if there's a backwash with a P-trap and all the water, the DE water is going somewhere not in the area around the filter, you can actually clean the DE filter off in the tank itself. You can do this in two methods. You can clean it off with the top manifold intact. You just have to develop skill. The Orbit's nozzle, by the way, is great for this. It can be a little messy though, as DE and water shoot back up at you, so be prepared for that. But you can clean a DE filter inside the tank in some cases with the right nozzle if you're experienced at it and you can do this correctly. One thing you have to do afterwards is you put the lid back on and give the filter a good backwashing just to make sure you got all the residual out of there. Or you can remove the top manifold and then clean the DE grids inside the filter. This is an easier way to do it because then you can see in between the grids. And as long as the backwash is functioning and the water is draining somewhere into a P-trap, into the sewer, you can do this successfully. If it's draining somewhere near the equipment, it gets really messy, so I wouldn't recommend it unless it's draining somewhere outside of the customer's home. And this is a really effective way to clean a DE filter rapidly. Just take off the top manifold, hose everything off while it's in there, and you can call it a day pretty easily. You may want to give it a quick backwashing also to make sure there's no residual. And the filters that I like the best are the Pentair 4000 series. I'm not a big fan of the 2000 series because that lid sometimes can be problematic, but the 4000 series is my favorite DE filter because it's actually reversed. You have the bottom manifold on top, you have the top manifold on bottom, and so basically you take the lid off the 4000 series. By the way, that lid is pretty heavy, and then you can clean the cartridges by simply pulling them out of the bottom manifold after you take the top manifold off, of course, which is the bottom manifold in the other filters. Kind of weird how I'm describing it, but you kind of get the idea when you do one. And then you can hose the grids off very easily. So my favorite, easy to rebuild and very easy to clean. I think also one thing that you're going to find handy out there when you're cleaning these filters is a silicone lube for the O-ring. And this is a silicone spray that I use. And you can use any RV grade silicone spray, by the way. So go to AutoZone, ask them, hey, where's your RV silicone spray? They'll point you to the aisle, and you can use any RV grade silicone spray. The silicone spray is an easy way to lube up the O-ring. If you're using the Magic Lube, I mean, that's fine, I guess. But to me, Magic Lube is extremely messy applying it, and really messy when you're cleaning a filter later with the Magic Lube on the O-ring. It just turns black and it gets all over the place. To me, the silicone spray is the best. It actually, I was doing this one time and an engineer came out and he's like, hey, I noticed you're using silicone spray. That's really great because, I work for whatever, Boeing or somewhere. And I know that the silicone spray really will massage into the O-ring and make it last longer, and it's really great for the O-rings. I'm like, all right, that sounds good. Carry on, and hopefully you're building good planes and, lubing those O-rings in those airplanes. But basically, the silicone spray does make the O-ring last longer, and I found that it's much easier to get the lid on when you use silicone spray. Every O-ring you can spray with it, and I've found that the O-rings last maybe 3 or 4 times longer out there in the field with the silicone spray versus the Magic Lube. Magic Lube is still good, but I prefer the silicone spray. So I use the Boss silicone sprays in a purple can. You can also just use, again, any RV silicone spray will work fine. And I like spraying the O-ring. I like spraying the drain plug O-ring, and basically anything that you can spray. I like spraying the spring barrel nut. And by the way, that's a little tip there. Every time you take that spring barrel nut off and on, you're kind of stripping the bolt a little bit each time. And so if you spray that with silicone spray or just dip the Magic Lube, actually the Magic Lube container will fit right into most of those threaded bolts at the end of the clamp, and you can just stick that into the Magic Lube and pull it out, and it'll lube it up for you cleanly. But I use the silicone spray myself. And if you lube those up, the spring barrel nuts will last a lot longer, or the bolts themselves and the clamps will last a lot longer than if you don't. The worst thing that you can have happen is that you start to strip that clamp with the bolt on there, because then you're spending like 30 minutes getting that spring barrel nut off that filter, and then you got to replace that clamp. So lube that up also, and use the silicone spray. I highly recommend it for filter cleaning. It's a clean and effective way to lube up those O-rings. So I'll go back to the beginning when I mentioned splitting up the filter cleanings with DE and cartridge filters. Another reason why you want to do this is because I like to carry spare diatomaceous earth grids on my truck. And there's kind of a rule of thumb. If you're going to replace 3 grids, that's fine. You should have at least 4 or 5 of each filter size grid, 36, 48, 60. If you have some 72ers on there, those would be the old Purex 2000 series filters. And have those grids in your truck. I keep them in my back seat because I've had some fly out of the back of my truck. They're pretty light, so I don't necessarily carry them in the back of my truck. Although you can if you have a box and you can put them in that box. Sometimes when you order a grid set of 8, keep that box and you can put grids in there and put it in the back of your truck again, just to make sure they don't fly out. You don't want them exposed to the sun either, because the sun can really deteriorate the grids rapidly when they're exposed to the sunlight. But you should have plenty of spare grids, plenty of spare O-rings for the filters. And the reason why I like to split my filter cleaning up is because I'm carrying diatomaceous earth on my truck. I'm carrying the grids, I'm carrying the O-rings for those filters. It can be a pain to have all that carried on your truck for a month-long period. And so I'll do the DE filters first. And then after I'm done with the DE filters, I'll get rid of all the extra accessories that I carry for DE filters. And then I'll just clean the cartridge filters at that point. So to me, that makes it a much more manageable to where you do the DE filters first, have all those spare parts on your truck, and then switch over to cartridge filters, because sometimes you're actually replacing the cartridges. And I have a 3-year cycle with the cartridge filters. These are for the full-size cartridge filters, excluding the System 3 filters, of course, because those cartridges last longer. And besides that, those cartridges cost just as much as like replacing the whole filter. It's really crazy. So I usually let the System 3 cartridges go for 5 or 6 years. But the regular quad type cartridge filters, the 420s, the 520s. I usually replace those every 3 years, and I make a note when you're cleaning the filter, make a note in your apps, make a note somewhere that you've replaced them, and then 3 years later, you want to replace them again. Usually they last 3 years, sometimes less depending on the pool, but 3 years is kind of when I replace them. So you're carrying cartridges sometimes on your truck, and mixing both of those together, I just don't have enough room on my truck, and sometimes you get mixed up. You forget to bring the cartridges because you have the DE grids in your truck. So try to split them up, DE first, cartridges second, and that way you can carry the replacement cartridges on your truck as well. And I mentioned the rule of thumb that you can replace 3 DE grids, and that's fine. But if there's 4 or 5 torn grids in that cartridge, then it's the DE filter, then you want to get the whole DE grid set. They sell them in packs of 8 if you have like an FNS Plus. You may want to even get the whole grid assembly that comes with the top manifold, bottom manifold, all the grids fully assembled for you. To me, sometimes that's easier than replacing the grids, especially if the top manifold is getting old. You notice that maybe there's some hairline cracks, or if it's at least 6 or 7 years old. I like getting the whole grid assembly. You can buy these at your supplier. Basically, it's all 8 grids in a circle with the top manifold and the bottom manifold, and also the rod and nut on top to secure it. And you just take out the old one and you drop in the new one, and you're pretty much done. And that's the easiest DE filter rebuild that you can do. So every single DE filter that's top manifold, FNS Plus, Jandy, Hayward, they have the grid set assemblies available. This is a kind of a Pool Pro inside trick. And I would suggest if you're going to replace all 8 grids, and if the top manifold again is old, 8, 9, 10 years old, then I would get the whole grid assembly and you can drop it in there. And since Penta filters are popular in my area, I'll just give you a part number so that you can kind of look this up and see the grid assembly that I'm talking about. So here's one here. It's the part number 590-23300. Of course, you can just go to Google and type in Penta FNS Plus DE element assembly or grid assembly complete, and it'll give you that. And so it has everything. You just take the old one out again and drop the new one in. And that filter should be good for a good 5 or 6 years. DE grids last, in my opinion, they're not made as well as they used to be. So every 3 or 4 years, you should be changing all 8 grids out. They start not to be as clean. You can tell when a DE filter grids are going bad, and you hose them off. They still have that brown stain on them, or some of that plastic skeleton, the frame is cracked and protruding through the grids. That's when you know that the DE grids are going bad. And of course, some have holes in them. Any hole in the DE grid will let DE back in the pool, by the way. Even a small, half an inch hole in the grid will let a tremendous amount of diatomaceous earth back into the pool. So those need to be replaced often. Bottom line, stay organized. Use whatever tools are available to make your filter cleaning faster, like the Multi-Tork or the Cyclone filter cleaner or the Orbits nozzle, and you're going to have a great time cleaning filters. And one last tip, I think you should always have an apron with you. If you do pool service, have an apron so that when you're doing your filter cleaning, you're not going to get filthy dirty. The last thing you want to do is be covered in DE and dirt and then show up at one of your stops looking like you just fell into a mud puddle. So make sure you wear an apron. You can get a waterproof apron anywhere, usually at you're at Walmart or wherever, and just wear that apron while you clean the filters. Also good if it has pockets. That way you can put the spring barrel nut in one pocket, maybe put a Multi-Tork tool in another, or your Orbits nozzle in your pocket. That way you don't leave it at the customer's stop. So the apron actually has a twofold purpose, keeps you clean, and the pockets help you stay organized. If you're looking for other podcasts I've recorded, you can find those on my website, swimmingpoollearning.com. Just click on the podcast banner icon on the banner. That'll take you to a drop-down menu over 1,400 podcasts that I have recorded. And if you're interested in the coaching program that I offer, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week, and God bless. Real quick, if you're not using pool service software, try Skimmer free for 30 days at getskimmer.com/poolguy. Again, that's getskimmer.com/poolguy. Skimmer, everything you need to run your pool service business all in one app. Pool Service Pro. Open a Leslie's wholesale account today and receive wholesale pricing on products you use every day. Leslie's Pool Supply offers convenient locations that are open 7 days a week. Another great benefit of opening a Leslie's wholesale account is Leslie's referral program. Get referred to a customer looking for weekly pool service. Save time and money and grow your pool service route and become a Leslie's Pro.